Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you were surrounded by people, yet completely alone inside? You laughed when they laughed. You nodded when they spoke. You followed when they moved. But deep down, something in you knew this isn't who I really am. See, most people spend their entire lives trying to fit in. They shape their dreams to match what others expect. They silence their own voice just so they don't stand out. Do you know what that creates? A life that feels safe on the outside, but empty on the inside. A life where you blend into the crowd, but you never discover the power of who you truly are. The truth is, every breakthrough, every transformation, every moment of greatness starts with the courage to walk alone, to stand apart, to say, I choose my path, even if nobody else believes in it right now. I want you to really hear me, because this could change your life. The moments you feel most isolated, most misunderstood, most different, those moments aren't your weakness. They're your doorway. They are the invitation to step into your authentic power. And if you have the courage to accept that invitation, alone for a season, you will come out stronger, clearer, and unstoppable. So today, I'm going to show you why walking alone isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. Because the moment you stop living for the crowd, you start living for your calling, everything changes. When you choose to walk alone, something powerful begins to happen inside you. Most people don't realize it at first, because when you step away from the comfort of the crowd, it feels uncomfortable. It feels strange. Your mind starts screaming at you. What if I lose them? What if they laugh at me? That's the fear of separation talking. But if you can hold steady and stay the course, you'll discover is that walking alone is where your real strength is born. Think about it. When you always have someone to lean on, you never truly know your own capacity. You never test the limits of what you can handle. It's like a muscle. If you never put resistance on it, it never grows. Strength is built under pressure, not in ease. And life works the exact same way. The minute you decide to take your own path, even when nobody else understands, you begin training your mind and spirit to be strong in ways you never thought possible. Here's the truth. Most people are weak, not because they lack potential, but because they've never had to face themselves. They've always had someone else to blame, someone else to hold them up, someone else to point the finger at. But when you walk alone, there's no one left to point to. It's just you. And in that space, you either break or you rise. And if you choose to rise, you discover you're 10 times more powerful than you ever knew. I want you to remember something. Solitude is not emptiness. Solitude is training. It is the fire that forges resilience. When you stand on your own 2 feet and push forward despite the noise, despite the doubts, despite the loneliness, you're building the foundation of an unshakable human being. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, and below you is everything familiar: friends, approval, comfort. And ahead of you is the unknown, your calling, your potential, your greatness. The crowd behind you is shout with us. Don't go that way. It's risky. It's dangerous. Nobody does that. And in that moment, your legs are trembling, your heart is pounding, and fear is screaming louder than courage. That's the very moment that decides the course of your life. If you step back into the crowd, you'll feel safe, but you'll never grow. But if you take that step forward, even shaking, uncertain, you'll discover wings you didn't know you had. Strength doesn't come from comfort. It doesn't come from certainty. It comes from doing what scares you, from walking when you'd rather stop, from moving forward even when you're surrounded by doubt. And you only build that when you walk alone. I can promise you this: every person you admire, every leader, every innovator, every individual who transformed their life or changed the world, at some point they walked alone. They had to face nights where no one believed in them, days where everyone questioned them, moments where they felt like giving up. But in that solitude, they discovered themselves. They discovered a strength no one could ever take away. And that's what allowed them to rise. You see, the crowd gives you borrowed strength, but walking alone gives you own strength. Strength disappears when the people disappear. Own strength can never be taken from you because it was built inside you. And when you have that, nothing can stop you. Walking alone forces you to stop asking, will they think, and start asking, who am I really? It forces you to rely on your own decisions, to trust your own instincts, to carry your own weight. At first, it feels heavy. At first, it feels unbearable. But with each step, you get stronger, clearer, more resilient. And then one day you wake up and realize you don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't need backup. You've got everything you need inside of you. That strength changes everything, because life will test you. Life will throw storms your way. It will knock you down. It will try to strip you of everything you thought you had. If your foundation is built on others, you'll crumble. If your foundation is built on the strength you forged in solitude, you will bend, but you won't break. You'll get knocked down, but you'll rise faster. You'll lose things, but you'll never lose yourself. That's the power of walking alone. It reveals the version of you that is unshakable, the version of you that is unstoppable, the version of you that was always there waiting to be discovered. So when you feel that loneliness creeping in, you feel like no one understands, when you feel like you're the only one taking a path that nobody else dares to take, don't run from it. Don't see it as punishment. See it as training. See it as the resistance that is shaping you into someone extraordinary. Because what feels like isolation today will become the strength you carry for the rest of your life. And when that happens, You'll never again doubt whether you can handle what's ahead, because you'll know that no matter what happens, no matter who stays, no matter who leaves, you can stand on your own. And when you can stand on your own, nothing can ever stand in your way. When you finally step away from the noise, when you choose to stand apart, something incredible happens. Clarity begins to show up. You see, most people don't even realize how clouded their vision is. They wake up every day flooded by opinions, expectations, comparisons, endless noise from the world around them. And in the middle of that storm, they can't even hear their own voice. That's why so many people wander through life without direction, without certainty, without fulfillment. They're busy living everyone else's version of life, but they've never stopped long enough to ask, what do I actually want? Who am I really? The crowd is loud. And if you're not careful, that noise drowns out your truth. But when you make the decision to walk alone, even for a season, that noise begins to fade. And for the first time, you can hear your own thoughts. You can feel your own instincts. You can sense where your heart has been trying to guide you all along. That's clarity, and clarity is power. Think about it. If you're in a stadium with 50,000 people screaming, you can't hear the person standing next to you. If you step outside into the quiet, suddenly you hear every word clearly. That's what happens when you separate yourself from the constant pull of the crowd. Your vision clears, your values surface. Your path becomes visible in ways you couldn't see before. And here's the thing, clarity doesn't come from adding more noise, more advice, more opinions. Clarity comes from subtraction. It comes from cutting away what doesn't belong. It comes from stepping back far enough that you can see the picture without distortion. And the only way you can do that is by having the courage to stand apart. Most people are terrified of silence. They can't sit in a quiet room without reaching for their phone, without distracting themselves, without filling the space. Do you know why? Because silence exposes truth. It shows you what you've been avoiding, reveals the gap between the life you're living and the life you want. And that's uncomfortable. But that discomfort is the birthplace of vision. If you don't face it, you stay stuck in fog forever. When you walk alone, you create space for that vision to finally come through. It might not come all at once. It might come slowly, like the sunrise, where the darkness begins to lift one layer at a time. At first, you just see shadows. Then you see shapes. And finally, you see the full landscape. That's what clarity feels like. And once you have it, your life begins to change because you're no longer guessing, no longer wandering, no longer relying on what everyone else is doing. I'll tell you this, clarity is rare. Most people never get it. They live and die in the fog, moving from one thing to another, hoping that something outside them will light the way. But the people who truly change their lives, create something extraordinary, are the ones who dare to step away long enough to let the fog clear inside themselves. When you know where you're going, distractions lose their power. The temptation to compare disappears. The need to be approved fades away because clarity gives you certainty and certainty gives you energy. How many times have you felt drained, not because you were doing too much, but because you didn't know what direction you were actually going in? That's the exhaustion of confusion. But the minute you get clear, you feel alive again because every step you take has meaning. And here's the truth you need to understand. Clarity isn't given to you. It's created by you. It's created when you stop listening to 1,000 voices and start listening to the one voice that matters. Your own. It's created when you stop asking, what do they think? And start asking, what feels right, aligns with who I am. That's the moment life begins to shift. Now, will clarity always be comfortable? No, in fact, sometimes clarity hurts. Sometimes it reveals that the job you're in isn't right for you. Sometimes it reveals that the relationship you're holding on to is no longer aligned. Sometimes it reveals that the path you thought you were supposed to take isn't yours to walk, and that's not easy to face. Avoiding truth doesn't change it. It just delays it. The faster you embrace clarity, the faster you align your life with what's real. And once you have that alignment, everything else begins to accelerate. It's like flying through the clouds in a plane. When you're in the middle of them, it's bumpy, it's uncertain, you can't see anything. But once you break through the clouds into clear skies, suddenly you see forever. You see the horizon. You see where you're going. And in that moment, fear is replaced with certainty. That's what walking alone does for you. It takes you through the turbulence until you rise above into clarity. The beauty of clarity is that it doesn't just give you direction, it gives you conviction. You stop needing the crowd to tell you you're on the right track because you know inside yourself. You stop second guessing every move because your decisions aren't based on fear anymore, they're based on vision. And when you live from vision instead of fear, you become unstoppable. That's why standing apart is not a punishment, it's a gift. It's the gift of seeing what others can't see because they're too distracted, too consumed, too attached to the noise. When you walk alone, you step into that rare space where vision becomes possible, where truth becomes undeniable, your future begins to reveal itself. And once you see it, you can't go back. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. So don't run from solitude. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't drown out the discomfort with noise. Embrace it. Lean into it. Because in that silence, you will hear the whisper of your destiny. And when that whisper becomes clear, it will be louder than any shout the crowd could ever give you. That kind of clarity, that kind of vision changes everything. One of the hardest parts about choosing to walk alone is that at some point, you're going to feel it, you're going to feel the sting of loneliness. And let's be real, nobody likes that feeling. Nobody wakes up and says, I hope today I feel isolated. I hope today I feel like nobody understands me. No, we're wired to crave connection. We're wired to want belonging. And when it feels like you don't have it, your mind starts playing tricks on you. It whispers, something's wrong with you. Maybe you're not enough. Maybe you're broken. But here's the truth. Loneliness is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something deeper is trying to wake up inside of you. The world has taught you to avoid loneliness at all costs. Stay busy, stay surrounded, stay distracted. Here's the paradox. The very thing you've been taught to run from is often the very doorway you need to walk through. Loneliness is not the enemy. Loneliness is the gateway to self-discovery. It's the moment when all the external noise fades. You're left with the one person you can't escape, yourself. And that's when you begin to truly see who you are. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you're constantly reflecting back what they expect. You laugh when they laugh, you agree when they nod, you adjust to keep the peace. You compromise so you won't be judged. Without even realizing it, you become a chameleon shifting to fit the environment. But when you're alone, there's no one left to perform for. There's no one left to impress. There's no one left to hide behind. And in that raw space, the mask comes off. And when the mask comes off, your truth comes forward. That's why so many people never find themselves, because they've never allowed themselves to sit in the discomfort of loneliness long enough for the discovery to happen. They keep filling the void with noise, with entertainment, relationships that don't serve them, with activities that numb them. But here's the thing, when you avoid loneliness, you avoid yourself. And when you avoid yourself, you miss the greatest relationship you'll ever have. The most powerful people on this planet are not the ones who've mastered how to impress others. They're the ones who've mastered how to be at peace with themselves. And that mastery only comes through solitude. You can't discover your authentic voice if you never allow silence. You can't discover your deepest desires if you never sit with the emptiness. You can't discover your true values if you're always drowning them in the expectations of others. It's in those lonely moments when it feels like nobody gets you that you begin to realize it's not about them getting you, it's about you finally getting yourself. And that discovery changes everything. Because once you know yourself, once you really know what you value, what you believe, what you're capable of, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop bending yourself out of shape just to fit in. You stop chasing people who were never meant to walk your path anyway. Loneliness becomes less of a curse and more of a teacher. It teaches you what you can live without. It teaches you who you really are when the lights are off and nobody's watching. That's when you realize you're not lonely, you're becoming whole. Here's the paradox, the very thing you fear, being alone, is the thing that sets you free. Because once you've discovered how to be complete with yourself, you're no longer desperate for others to complete you. And from that place, you attract relationships, friendships, partnerships that are based on alignment, not on need. You're not clinging to people out of fear, you're connecting with people out of truth. That's when life begins to shift. I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're sitting in an empty room, just you, no phone, no distractions, nothing to fill the silence. At first, your mind races. It wants to escape. It wants to check the time. It wants to grab onto something. But if you resist that impulse, if you just stay with yourself, eventually something begins to surface. Thoughts you've buried, desires you've suppressed, dreams you've postponed. And underneath all that, clarity. A voice that's been drowned out for years begins to speak. That's your true self. That's the person you were meant to become. You only hear it in the stillness. And I know some of you right now are thinking, but it hurts. It feels heavy. I don't like being alone. Of course it hurts. Growth always hurts in the beginning. That's why so few people ever transform. They quit the process the moment discomfort shows up. But if you can sit with that discomfort long enough, it begins to transform into strength. The heaviness turns into freedom. The silence turns into guidance. Loneliness turns into self-discovery. And when you've discovered yourself in that way, you walk into the world differently. You're no longer afraid of being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. You are no longer afraid of being rejected because you're no longer rejecting your own truth. You're no longer afraid of being alone because you know how to thrive in your own company. That's the power of embracing loneliness instead of running from it. It changes you at the core. So the next time you feel like you're on your own, the next time you feel like nobody gets it, the next time the room feels too quiet and the silence feels too loud, don't see it as emptiness. See it as an invitation to dive deeper, an invitation to discover, invitation to meet the one person you've been avoiding but need the most, you. And when you do, when you accept that invitation and truly discover yourself, you'll realize something profound. You were never really lonely to begin with. You were simply being introduced to the most important relationship of your life. One of the greatest prisons human beings live in is the need for approval. From the moment we're kids, we're taught to chase that pat on the back, that smile, that gold star. Over time, without even realizing it, we start to build our lives around it. We start asking ourselves, what do they think of me? Am I good enough? Do they like me? And slowly we stop living for ourselves and we start living for the crowd. We mold our choices to fit in, We shrink our dreams so they don't make others uncomfortable. We bury our truth just so we don't risk standing out. And do you know what that creates? A life that looks successful on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. Because no amount of approval can fill the emptiness that comes from betraying yourself. When you decide to walk alone, something radical happens. You break that chain. You stop being enslaved to the opinions of others. You stop living your life like it's a performance for the audience. You stop needing validation to feel worthy. That's the freedom most people never taste because they never take that lonely walk. Once you decide that your truth matters more than their applause, you become untouchable. Think about it. How many times have you wanted to try something, to say something, to become something, but you stopped yourself because you thought, well, they say, how many dreams have died in silence because someone was too afraid of being judged? How many lives have been wasted because people were terrified of not fitting in? That's the invisible cage most people never see. The only way to break out of it is to walk away from the crowd and prove to yourself that you don't need their approval to breathe. And here's the irony. The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you actually become respected. Because people can feel authenticity. They can feel when someone is living true to themselves. They might not agree with you. They might not even understand you. But deep down, they respect you because you have something rare: courage. Courage to be who you are without asking permission. Courage to take a stand even when it's unpopular. Courage to look someone in the eye and say, this is my life and I'm going to live it on my terms. Approval is addictive. The more you get, you need. And the moment it's taken away, you feel empty again. That's why living for approval is a trap. It never ends. But walking alone forces you to break that addiction. It forces you to go without the applause long enough to realize you don't actually need it. You discover that the real applause, the one that matters most, comes from within. It's the quiet confidence that comes when your actions match your values. Your decisions align with your truth when you know deep down that you didn't sell yourself out just to please someone else. And I want to be clear. Breaking free from approval doesn't mean you don't care about people. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself or push others away. It means you stop letting their opinions dictate your worth. It means you take back the power you've been given away. Because every time you let fear of judgment control you, you're handing someone else the steering wheel of your life. And they don't even know where you're trying to go. Walking alone puts you back in the driver's seat. It teaches you that confidence is not about being liked. It's about being aligned. It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, I stayed true to me even when it wasn't easy. That's the kind of confidence no one can take away from you because it wasn't given to you. It was built by you. Here's what's powerful. Once you stop living for approval, you start living for purpose. You stop asking, will they accept me? And you start asking, what was I put here to do? You stop worrying about whether people will clap. You start focusing on whether your life has meaning. And when you live from that place, your life expands. You take bolder steps. You move faster. You stop waiting for the world to validate you, and you start validating yourself through action, through growth, through impact. But I won't sugarcoat it. Breaking free isn't easy. When you first start walking alone, the silence of approval can feel deafening. You're used to the applause. You're used to the nods. You're used to the safety net. When it's gone, you feel exposed. You feel vulnerable. But that's when the shift happens. That's when you realize, wait a second, I'm still standing, I'm still breathing, I'm still moving forward. And in that moment, you realize you were never living off approval, you just thought you were. What was keeping you alive was always inside of you. The applause was just noise. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You'll never again give your power away so cheaply. You'll never again put your life on hold just to win over someone who doesn't even matter. You'll never again water yourself down so others can feel comfortable. Because once you've tasted freedom from approval, dependence feels like poison. I want you to imagine what your life would look like if you stopped asking, what will they think? And started asking, what do I think? What do I want? What's true for me? Imagine the decisions you would make. Imagine the risks you would take. Imagine the weight that would fall off your shoulders if you stopped performing and started living. That's what happens when you walk alone long enough to break the chains of approval. You become free. And freedom is the foundation of greatness. Because no one ever changed the world by trying to be liked by everyone. No one ever built a life of meaning by conforming to the crowd. The ones who made an impact, the ones who lived fully, were the ones who decided, I'm done chasing their approval. Here to live my truth. So don't fear walking alone. Don't fear losing applause. Don't fear disapproval. Fear something far greater, living a life that wasn't yours because you were too scared to claim it. Because at the end of the day, the only approval that matters is the approval you give yourself when you know you live true. And once you claim that, nothing can chain you again. There's something you have to understand. If you're ever going to create a life that matters, the crowd rarely produces greatness. The crowd produces comfort. Conformity, saying, is the crowd is built on what's safe, what's common, what's easy to accept. But greatness, true greatness, never comes from the middle of the pack. It comes from the outliers. It comes from the ones who dare to walk away, to stand apart, to endure being misunderstood, to hold onto a vision that nobody else could see yet. Look back through history. Every person who ever shifted the course of the world, every inventor, every leader, every pioneer. At some point, they had to stand against the tide. They had to be the one who said, I know everyone thinks this is impossible, but I see something different. They were mocked. They were ridiculed. They were doubted. And yet, because they chose to keep walking alone, they built things, they created movements, they achieved breakthroughs that the crowd never could. The truth is, the crowd doesn't want you to stand out, because the moment you stand out, you remind them of what they've settled for. The crowd loves average because average is safe. Average doesn't challenge. Average doesn't demand courage. But when you step outside of that, you decide you're not going to live confined by what's normal. You become a mirror. And that mirror makes people uncomfortable. They'll try to pull you back. They'll try to tell you you're crazy, arrogant, reckless. What they're really saying is, don't remind me of what I gave up on. That's why most people never become who they could be. They're too afraid of leaving the safety of the herd. They want greatness, but they don't want isolation. They want impact, but they don't want criticism. They want to rise, but they don't want to walk alone. And you can't have it both ways. If you want to do something extraordinary, you have to accept the price of being different. And here's the reality. The crowd will always resist what it doesn't understand. Think about every innovation that exists today, electricity, airplanes, the internet. At one point, those ideas were laughed at. People said, that'll never work. That's impossible. That's insane. But the people who carried those visions didn't stop because the crowd laughed. They kept going, and because they did, the impossible became normal. And that's how the world changes, by the courage of the few, not the acceptance of the many. But let me be clear about this. It's not just about changing the world. It's about changing your life. Because the same rule applies. If you want to build a life that's extraordinary, you can't expect to find it in the crowd. The crowd spends their evenings numbing themselves with distraction. The crowd lives for weekends and dreads Mondays. The crowd plays small because small feels safe. And if you follow them, you'll end up where they are, stuck, frustrated, waiting for a life they'll never create. Walking away from the crowd means making decisions that most people won't understand. It means waking up earlier, working harder, sacrificing more. It means doing what feels lonely while others are doing what feels easy. It means choosing discipline over comfort, vision over distraction, purpose over approval. And that's why so few ever make it. Because the path of greatness is narrow. Not many are willing to walk it. But here's the beauty. Once you step off that crowded path, once you accept that your journey will look different, something incredible happens. You begin to see possibilities that the crowd can't see. You start to tap into levels of potential that most people never discover. You begin to realize that the very things that made you feel different were never weaknesses. They were your gifts. They were the seeds of your greatness. And when you embrace that, you stop asking, why don't they see it? And you start saying, of course they don't see it. They weren't meant to. Because greatness doesn't come with consensus. If everyone already believed in it, it wouldn't be revolutionary. If everyone already understood it, it wouldn't be rare. The very fact that the crowd resists you is the proof that you're on a path they could never walk. And that's what makes it valuable. Think about it like this. Diamonds are valuable not because they're common, but because they're rare. Gold is precious not because everyone has it, because it's hard to find. Your path works the same way. If you're walking the same road as everyone else, don't expect a treasure at the end. But if you're brave enough to take the road fewer people travel, you're going to find something that most people will never touch. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like you're carrying a weight nobody else can understand. But that's the price of greatness. That's the price of building a life that means something. That's the price of walking alone. When you finally break through, when the vision you held in your heart becomes reality, when the sacrifice pays off, when the struggle turns into strength, you'll look back and realize that leaving the crowd was the best decision you ever made. So don't be afraid of standing apart. Don't be afraid of walking a road that looks different. Don't be afraid of being misunderstood. Be afraid of staying in the crowd and never discovering who you could have become. Because the truth is, will never make you great. But walking alone just might. Here's the part that most people don't realize. Walking alone doesn't mean you're going to walk alone forever. It doesn't mean you're destined for isolation. It doesn't mean that choosing to stand apart condemns you to a life without connection. What it means is that for a season, you have to walk by yourself so you can become who you were meant to be. And once you do, something incredible starts to happen. You begin to attract the right people into your life. Not because you chase them, not because you beg for them, but because your authenticity becomes a magnet. When you're living in the crowd, trying to please everyone, trying to mold yourself into who others want you to be, you attract people who are drawn to the mask. You attract relationships that match the version of you that isn't even real. That's why so many people feel empty even when they're surrounded. They're not really connected because the connection isn't built on truth. It's built on performance. But when you have the courage to walk alone, to shed the mask, to live from your true values and vision, suddenly the wrong people fall away. The ones who were only there for the performance disappear. And in that space, the right ones show up. And here's the beauty. The right people don't just accept you, they amplify you. They don't hold you back. They push you forward. They don't demand that you shrink to fit in. They challenge you to expand into your potential. The only way you ever find them is by first being willing to stand alone long enough to let the wrong people leave. It's like clearing a field. If the soil is covered in weeds, nothing healthy can grow. You've got to pull up what doesn't belong before you can plant something real. Walking alone is the process of clearing your field. It feels empty at first. It feels bare, but that space is necessary so that when the right seeds are planted, they can actually take root and thrive. And I want you to understand this. The right people don't come because you chase them. They come because you became aligned with yourself. You stopped begging for acceptance. You stopped bending yourself out of shape. You stopped selling yourself short. And when that happens, you radiate a different energy. You walk with a different confidence. You carry yourself with a presence that says, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I don't need anyone's permission to get there. That energy is magnetic, and it draws to you the people who see you, who believe in you, who are aligned with your mission. Here's what's important. You have to be patient with the process, because there's a season of separation before there's a season of connection. There's a period where it feels like nobody gets you, like you're walking in silence, you're cut off, and that's where most people quit. They rush back to the crowd just to feel accepted, just to feel like they belong, and in doing so, they sabotage the process. They never allow themselves to get to the point where the right people could find them. You've got to be willing to endure that gap. You've got to trust that walking alone today will connect you with the right people tomorrow. And when those people come, you'll know the difference. Because with the wrong people, you always feel like you have to perform. With the right people, you feel like you can breathe. With the wrong people, you feel drained after spending time with them. With the right people, you feel charged, expanded, alive. That's how you know. And you'll never experience the kind of alignment if you don't first go through the season of walking alone. And here's what's even more powerful. Once you attract the right people, your vision grows, because the right people don't just support you, they challenge you, they sharpen you, they call you higher. They remind you of your strength when you forget it. They see in you what the crowd could never see. They don't clip your wings, they help you fly further. That's the gift of alignment. But again, you only get there if you're first willing to walk through the fire of solitude. So don't fear the season of standing apart. Don't fear the silence. Fear the loneliness. See it for what it is, a refining process. It's life clearing out what doesn't belong so it can bring in what does. And when that shift happens, you'll look back and realize that the people who left weren't meant to stay. Part of the crowd. They belong to the chapter of your life where you were still performing, still seeking approval, still trying to blend in. The people who show up after you've walked alone, those are the people who are aligned with your destiny, not just your comfort. And the truth is, you don't need a crowd anyway. You don't need hundreds of people clapping for you. You don't need endless approval. You need a handful of people who truly see you, who truly believe in you, who are willing to walk with you on the path you've chosen. That's worth more than all the superficial connections in the world. You'll never find it by blending in. You'll only find them by standing apart. So yes, walking alone is hard. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels uncertain. But if you stay the course, if you refuse to compromise, if you hold on to your truth, eventually you'll realize that standing apart was never about losing people. It was about making space for the right ones to come in. And when they do, when you find yourself surrounded by people who align with your vision, who challenge you, who lift you, see the real you, you'll know it was worth every step you took alone.